Well, this is Baconsthorpe Castle up in North Norfolk. We're about 5 or 6 miles south of Holt, the attractive Georgian market town of Holt. And what I have behind me here is Baconsthorpe Castle. More a castle in name than reality. It's best description probably is a fortified manor with pretensions. It was constructed sometime after 1450, 1460 by a shyster lawyer called John Hayden. John Hayden had worked as a lawyer stroke fixer for a number of local magnates, including in particular the Duke of Norfolk. And as a result, he took part in the Duke of Norfolk's campaign against the Paston family. If you've not heard of the Pastons were local minor gentry, only 1 or 2 generations off of being poor farmers, but they managed to work their way up through being lawyers themselves. The Pastons first came into conflict with Lord Mollins over the Gresham Manor in 1449, where the Lord Mollins, later Lord Hungerford, staged a very, very aggressive eviction of Lady Paston, and then later fortified it with artillery. 1450, of course, we have Cade's Rebellion down in London. Hayden, John Hayden, the man who built this place, was possibly locally unpopular, and by the 1460s he may have thought, I need a bolt hole. So we get this. Behind me you can see a gatehouse, which English Heritage optimistically describe as a keep gatehouse. And then also behind me you can see a stretch of wall, and there are some embrasures visible in that front wall. They are not matched on the other side of the gatehouse, and we'll come to that in a moment. Anyway, behind me you can see a stretch of wall, and you should also be able to see traces of the wet moat just down there. I'm not going to fall in myself, but you get the idea. I'm also now staring into the sun. There's a wet moat down there. On the far side of the castle there is in fact a substantial mere or muddy lake. So John Hayden seems to have started slapping up this corner of the castle, as you can see. At some stage or another his son, later knighted Sir Henry Hayden, extended it both beyond the gatehouse in that direction and back behind me. The work immediately behind me, the middle 15th century work, is pretty poor. We're talking of a castle which would be, if it's being built today, we're talking breeze block and plasterboard. By the time you get around the back, it's really, really poor work. If one of the castle builders who built Edward I's castles in North Wales took one look at this, he would probably shake his head and walk away in horror. This is a real bodge job. Think of John Hayden as the used car dealer who gets into the stockbroker estate, slaps up some awful property, puts 2 whitewashed lions next to it and a second-hand roller on the front and thinks he's made it. Well, this is John Hayden's version of that. The gatehouse itself is several stories high. There is, at low tide, when the moat's not up, you can see there's a double garderobe arrangement in the corner. The tower itself seems to have been used as a principal lodging. And then behind me, on that side, which you can't see, there's a later 16th century building, which is a gatehouse. Built as a gatehouse, but then sometime in the 17th to 18th century it was converted into a minor dwelling. And then it remained occupied until 1920. And then sometime in 1920, one of the 2 towers of the gatehouse just fell off. So this is Baconsthorpe Castle. It's up in North Norfolk. It's free to enter, to just park up and walk in sort of thing. There's a £2 charge for the car park. And that's it. Baconsthorpe Castle, North Norfolk. If you're ever up this way, check it out. Right, here we are at the front where the cars would pull up if visiting Baconsthorpe. Ahead of us is that 16th century gatehouse I referred to. As you can see just here, there's now just a pedestrian entrance, but trust me, on the other side of that wall there is actually a huge archway which was filled in sometimes in the 17th or 18th century, and this gatehouse remained in use until about 1920 when the matching tower, the tower that matched this one here that was on that side, just fell off and it rendered the property uninhabitable. That is sometimes a risk around here with filled flint construction. We move down here. English Heritage have put out a very nice diagnostic board which explains a little bit of the layout of the site. I'm going to have to keel over to stay off the there we go. Now what we've got here, that is the gatehouse immediately in front of us. Footpath entrance up to the building you saw just now in the earlier film. That's that bit there. John Hayden built this section from here to here. According to Pevsner, the plan was to put a wall up to the well, which is indicated there. We're going a little bit closer. You can see there's a well showing here under the word court. That was going to be the original footprint of the castle, which is why there's no embrasures on this side. Now, by the time Sir Henry Hayden extended the castle back and round, his needs were less defensive and more practical. And on this corner here, from here to there is no trace of any defensive work. It's basically a large farm wall with what looks like a building here which was used for farming purposes. The last tower that Sir Henry built there, the basement of it has been opened to the moat and the mere, and it appears to have been used for washing sheep fleeces. So that gives you an idea how much the building's use changed in 50 years. So, backing out again to there, there's traces of ornamental gardens here, probably from the 16th century, and the large barn on this side, which I'm going to turn over to here. This barn is also part of the original structure, so this may date from middle 15th through to 16th. Similar structure, but of course, because this building remained in use, no one's bothered picking all those fancy stone dressings away. Whereas if you look back at the main gatehouse on there in the distance, I shall go in quite close to there. Nearly all the stone dressings have been picked off of that building. That is typical stone robbing. They didn't bother so much with the flints. Now you may notice there's lots of fences here at the moment. I didn't mention this in the first film. The reason for this is that English Heritage at the moment are having a bit of a crisis. Year and a half, 2 years ago, a big chunk of one of their Henry VIII forts down on the Solent fell into the sea, despite numerous warnings. And you can now see that there's railings all around here. I can't go in the main site at all, it's all fenced off, and there's every indication over there that there's actually a wheelbarrow up there and they're actually doing some work on it. So it looks like English Heritage are catching up with repairs on buildings like this. Not just this one, they've recently worked on Binham Priory, they've recently worked on Castle Acre Priory, both also in Norfolk. And when I last visited Orford Castle in Suffolk, the entire outer wall of the keep was covered, literally covered in scaffolding. So English Heritage are playing catch up with some of their maintenance. So if you come here at the moment, this is February 2023, you won't get into the main site, but I would guess that by midsummer they might have opened up again. So this is Baconsthorpe Castle. We're about 5 miles south of the attractive Georgian market town of Holt. If you're ever up this way, check it out, it's an interesting building.